powerful episode of Pleasure Principles, the podcast where we dive into the hidden patterns of love, intimacy, and healing. I'm your host Avik, and today we are unpacking a subject that touches so many lives, yet often remains shrouded in silence, like codependency, narcissistic abuse, trauma. Yeah. So, to guide us through this, I'm really honored to welcome Sherry Gaba. So, welcome to the show, Sherry.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for doing what you do in the world.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining today. And uh, the listeners, before we delve deep into the discussion, I'll quickly love to introduce you. It's Sherry. So, Sherry is a psychotherapist, life coach, and leading expert on addiction and recovery. So, you may have seen her on VH1's Celebrity Rehab, CNN, Inside Edison, uh, E News, and more. So, she's also the author of Love Smacked, where she addresses the relationship addiction and the codependency. So, through her private practice, media appearances, and her own podcast, The Love Fix, she has given countless people the tools to break free from the toxic cycles and reclaim their sense of self worth. So, I'll not take much of your time, dear listeners. Let's get into the discussion. And Sherry, welcome to the show. It's really, really pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for that introduction. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. So Sherry, I mean, I'd really love to start with. I mean, it's a very common words we hear, but I'd love to hear from you. Like, what exactly is love addiction?
So, love addiction, there's a lot of signs and symptoms to it, but it's
Mm,
known as a process addiction. So, we usually think of addiction as substances like drugs or alcohol, but love addiction is a lifestyle addiction or a soft addiction. So, it would be similar to having a food addiction or a
mm,
sex addiction or a gambling addiction or a shopping
mm,
addiction. It's a soft addiction or lifestyle addiction. And it's basically has the same feelings as a substance. It has the same mood altering activity and behavior. It creates that same euphoric state that a drug would cause, but this time it's about a person's identity. And so when they're with someone, if they break up, there's this
mm,
longing for this attachment. There's this longing for these pleasurable feelings of this lost relationship. It's this craving. And without a relationship, you feel really very empty. You feel like you're kind of in the void of nothingness. Um, and what happens is you're more going to be more vulnerable to toxic relationships because you feel like nothing if you're not in a relationship. You just don't have an ability to self soothe, to be in your own skin, to be comfortable in your own skin. So when you get into a relationship, you often over adapt to what others want. There's no boundaries. You have a fear of letting go. You have a fear of the unknown. You try to change others to meet your needs, and then you'll turn yourself in a pretzel to meet their needs. You won't feel whole unless you're in a relationship. You have this deep-seated fear of abandonment. It has withdrawal symptoms, just like if somebody was addicted to heroin, they have withdrawal symptoms. And the bottom line is we give up who we are to be with somebody. And it's
mm.
agonizing and it's empty and it's obsessive and you feel like you'll never find love again, which is not true, but that's how it feels.
Got it. Yep, yep. So, if you can also share, like, how can someone tell the difference, like, between being in love and being addicted to the idea of love?
Well, if you're, if you're with somebody and you meet them for the first time and you fall in love instantly and you think about them constantly and you fantasize about a future together, um,
Mm,
that would be a love addiction. Real healthy love is slow, it's steady. You're not overwhelming your partner for attention. You're not
mm,
feeling like it's responsibility to change a person. There's more acceptance. You're not trying to make them perfect. You're not trying to make yourself perfect. Um, you're your authentic self. You're your true self when you're in a healthy relationship. Not trying to change yourself to suit them or turning yourself into a pretzel to suit them.
mm,
You're not hyper vigilant. You don't overact to the slightest sign that they're not interested in you. You feel You feel good. You feel like that feeling of flow that this feels really good. This doesn't feel anxious. I think when people feel really anxious, I think a lot of times it's a sign, uh-oh, this could be love addiction again. And a lot of people with an anxious attachment style will have love addiction because that's what makes them feel comfortable being in a relationship. And when they're not, they feel really awful. They don't know how to regulate their nervous system. So when you're with someone that's in a healthy situation, you feel regulated, you feel calm, you feel like there's a flow. There's no feeling of emptiness. You haven't lost your self-esteem to be in this relationship. So, love addiction itself is not calm. Healthy love is calm.
Yeah. Yeah. So, lovely. I mean, that's really an eye opener. And uh, many people ask themselves at some point that, am I in a kind of toxic relationship? So, what are the kind of clear signs that someone is caught in one?
So, for instance, what I was saying earlier, I just want to reiterate, if you are a love addict, there's a good chance you're going to be vulnerable to toxic relationships because you're so afraid to be alone. So you're often going to settle for less. So a toxic relationship is usually characterized by a constant worry about the partner. Do they love me? You're obsessing about them. You're altering your life habits and needs just to be with them. You give up who you are to be with that person. They become the single most important thing in your life. You obsess about every little detail for fear of losing them. If you're in a toxic relationship, you notice subtle changes in their texts. You're very, hyper aware of what they're, writing, what they're doing on a daily basis. You're ruminating over them, obsessing over them, and you want to spend every minute with them. And then when you're with them, oftentimes you're just walking on eggshells, because you're so uncomfortable being with them. You feel guilty for everything because often a toxic person will project everything onto you. It'll be your fault, everything that's going on or isn't going right. So you often feel guilty. There's a lot of fighting that goes on when you're with a toxic person. Um, it just never seems to stop. They're manipulative, they're controlling. You just don't have the freedom to be who you want to be. Um, your partner's making decisions for you. They're dominating your actions. A toxic person may feel they have the right to tell you who to spend time with, how to dress, how to do your hair. In healthy relationships, people make decisions together. They make decisions independently. No one is controlling them.
Mm.
Unfortunately, in toxic relationships, there can be a lot of yelling and insulting. There can even be physical abuse. Um, there's a lot of disrespect. Um, does your partner know that they're disrespecting you? Yeah. If uh, are they chronically late? Are they forgetting important events? Um, and are they dishonest? Do they lie to you? Dishonesty is definitely a sign of a toxic relationships. Um, so there's kind of a misalignment in what they say and what's really going on. Um, and the most important part of knowing you're in a toxic relationship is when you lose yourself, you stop taking care of yourself, you stop taking care of your self-care. You withdraw from the hobbies and activities that you enjoy. You start giving up don't take care of your appearance,
Mm.
and you neglect your mental, physical, and spiritual health.
Uh, okay. Hmm. So like, I mean, do toxic relationship always show themselves dramatically, or can they sneak up slowly over time also?
I'm sorry, what is your question?
I'm saying like, do toxic relationship always show themselves dramatically, or there is some slowly over time as well?
No, they're usually very fast and furious. They start very fast. There's usually some kind of love bombing that's going on where
Mm.
they're, trying to kind of suck you in. They're,
Mm.
that's generally what their manipulation is. They want to kind of capture your attention very fast. And remember, if you're a love addict, you're
Mm.
be easily captured because you want that attention. You want to be loved so badly. So it feels so good. And then you get in the relationship and suddenly they're not the same person they were when they first met you. So that's that's definitely a sign of being in a toxic relationship, that they start out really fast and furious, and they try to get your attention really fast. They promise all these things, and then suddenly they become this other person. So, there's quite a difference between the beginning of the relationship and then what ends up happening in the relationship.
Mm. Okay, okay, got it. And so why do we become addicted to the toxic relationship? Like even when we know that they are harming us.
So a history of toxic relationships usually leads us to attract men and women when we're trying to recreate a familiar toxic cycle of the family we grew up with.
Mhm.
So, like, toxic relationships are usually a subconscious desire to resolve unresolved issues that might have happened as children. So, for instance, if a parent was there for us, if the father
Mhm.
who fails to protect their child from abuse from the mother and is emotionally distanced, the tendency is to attract men in our adult lives that are also unavailable and distant. So we're basically recreating whatever we went through growing up. I'm not saying all toxic relationships are created that way, but often it's because we didn't get what we need. We weren't given the nurturing, the attachment. It all stems from how we were raised. What was our relational experience with our parents? If we were properly able to develop self-esteem or a positive self-image, we'd have more self-love. But if you grew up where your parents aren't there for you, maybe there was abuse or neglect, maybe there was a divorce, maybe you were parentified where you became sort of like the adult and your parent was the child. This is gonna
Mm.
lead you towards toxic relationships. Uh, you know, we that's just how it works. You don't get what you need when you're younger, then you're gonna end up attracting that, because we
Mm.
want what we know, and if that's all we know, then that's what we end up attracting.
Understood. Yep. So okay, that's really amazing. And like is it purely emotional, or are there even a kind of biological or neurological factors that play a role?
I think the neurological factor is that love addiction is an addiction, and it does
Okay.
have to do with the chemicals, and it does have the same state as withdrawal. If we're not with someone, someone who has a love addiction is not only addicted to romance, but it's addicted to the highs. When we talk about substance abuse, we're always looking for that first high. So an alcoholic will say, "Oh, I'm always looking for that first high, the one when I first realized how great alcohol makes me feel." Well, love addict is the same way. They're looking for that first feeling. Um, for me, it was, I had a boyfriend when I was 14 or 15, and it just made me feel like, "Oh my god, someone wants me, someone loves me," and it felt so good, and I spent a long time looking for that kinda high, but that's not really healthy.
Okay. Okay. And I mean it's humbling to realize how much our brains and bodies can get hooked on the
Yeah.
chaos, like mistaking it for the love. Am I right, or you want to say something on this?
That's why it's so important if you have early trauma to get a great
Mm.
trauma therapist, someone like myself who's licensed,
Mm.
who specializes in trauma to help you overcome some of the early abandonment issues, help you deal with anxiety, help you learn how to regulate your nervous system so that if you're not with somebody, you know how to feel safe within yourself,
Mm.
you know how to self-soothe. You don't need to look outside yourself. The opposite of addiction is connection, and the first step of connection is to connect with ourselves.
Okay. Okay. So amazing. That's really amazing. And um like and perhaps like the most hopeful part is like how do we begin to overcome the toxic relationships? What do you say?
So we start looking at our relationships as opportunities to heal, to grow, and become self-aware. Self-aware. So if you're someone listening to this podcast and you know that
Mm.
you go from one relationship to the next, or you keep attracting toxic people, this is just opportunity for growth. Um, the focus has to start shifting from the outside, like something on the outside making you feel good, but going inward. inward connecting to yourself, and inward connecting to your higher power, inward connecting to your highest self, your highest version of you, connecting to infinite intelligence, just connecting to something greater than just a person. A person can't make you feel good on the inside. So to really understand that every relationship that you manifest in your life is really just a mirror of the relationship you have with yourself. So if you keep attracting toxic relationships, you're probably not, you're nurturing your addiction to them, and you're not taking care of your own self. You're not, you're maybe you've given up self-care. So it's first and foremost, we have to give up that toxic relationship with ourselves, and really get to the root of what is this dark side of us? What are these shadow side? To be aware that healing an addictive toxic relationship doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, and it's welcoming the process, and welcoming that it's a constant work in progress. And it's about uncovering and discovering, your toxic childhood experiences and conditioning, and what your belief system was, and learning to start to build a connection with your healthy self, your spiritual self, the essence of you, your light. And at the beginning, it might feel, difficult because you're kind of letting go of an addiction, so to speak. Um, After a while, once you find the light in you, you start to feel really
Yeah.
amazing. You've suddenly have more confidence in yourself. You're becoming addicted to your healthy self, the self
Right.
that's valuable and resourceful and colorful and vibrant and strong.
Hmm. Got it. Yep. And for someone who is listening who feels trapped right now, what's the very first step they can take today to move towards the freedom? What do you say?
I say find a great trauma therapist. They could contact me at sherrygaba.com. They can get my book. Hopefully, you'll put the link of my book in the show notes. It's called Love Smacked, and at least give you an understanding of what love addiction is, what toxic relationships are, and then all kinds of tools to be able to help you
Mm.
heal. You can take my quiz at sherrygaba.com/NP quiz, and find out if you are, picking toxic relationships, and then get my free ebook about toxic
Mm.
relationships. Again, that's at sherrygaba.com/NP quiz. And then if you just go to sherrygaba.com, I have all kinds of free resources and blogs, and you can learn all about, you know, um, where are you on the spectrum of toxic relationships.
Mm. True. Exactly. Amazing. Lovely. And I'd say that that's the reminder. I mean, that healing begins with even the smallest act of reclaiming power, which is definitely incredibly liberating. So, uh, Sherry, thank you so much for bringing so much clarity and compassion to this conversation.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. And what I love most about your work is that you don't just define the problem, you illuminate a path forward. So, for all the listeners, like if you resonated with anything that we talked about today, please know this that you are not broken. You do not have to stay stuck in the patterns that hurt you. Healing from codependency and toxic love is not about becoming harder. It's all about becoming more whole, more aware, and more rooted in your own words, I'd say. So, if this episode spoke to you, share it with a friend, family, or someone whom you love the most, and subscribe for more. And let's continue these conversations together. So, with this hope, until next time, this is your host Avik signing off from Pleasure Principles. Stay curious, stay kind, and never settle for the love that costs you your sense of self. So, thank you so much.